I'm Rachel Ann Goodman, and you're listening to Talk of the Bay on KSQD Community Radio for the Monterey Bay area. And I'm here with Assembly Member Gail Pellerin, who represents a big portion of our listening area in the State Assembly. And she's here with a very special topic that we're going to talk about today that she's focusing on this month, and that is Suicide Prevention Month. It's an important message because we are losing so many young people, and not just young people, to this tragedy of death by despair, is what one person called it. And bringing attention to this has never been an easy conversation. And so to wander into it, Gail, as someone who has survived a family member doing this, is a very brave and also seemingly necessary thing that you're doing. So talk about why you decided, as not only your personal self, but as an assembly member, to bring this piece of discussion to the state level.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for talking about this very difficult subject to talk about. So, it's not, suicide was not a topic that I spent much time thinking or talking about before that horrific day, November 19th, 2018, when my husband of 25 years, Tom, the father of our two children, took his own life. And it just shook me to the core, shook our family to the core. And there was a lot that I did not understand about suicide and mental health. And I'm motivated to speak openly and publicly about these issues because I believe suicide is preventable and mental health conditions can be treated. So early on in my grieving process, I actually went to hear a speaker talk about suicide. And the speaker said, that's important, to put your grief to work. And so that really resonated with me. So I joined a local suicide survivors group. My family and I did that overnight walk in San Francisco for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And I did proclamations for the county and the cities, and I joined our local National Alliance on Mental Illness, the NAMI board. So, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about suicide during that time. And then I was really compelled to run for this assembly seat because I want to be a voice and a face for suicide prevention and awareness, as well as mental health. And I think it's just really powerful for these discussions to be had on our assembly floor. We had a very long presentation on Tuesday. We did a press conference, and then I presented my ACR 70, and so many members rose and spoke about their own personal thoughts and issues that they've had, personal experiences with losing a family member to suicide. And it was just a really powerful day. And I think the more of us that talk about this, the better off we all will be.
And Gail, I had both of your kids at various times in my Cabrillo classes, and they're just such dear people. This must have been, I just want to send my condolences to you. I don't know if I've ever just had the chance to tell you how much I held you in my heart over those times and how hard that must have been for your whole family.
Yeah, no, it was,
imagine.
It was pretty devastating. And I think certainly I've learned a lot on my suicide journey, and I'm just so grateful, as you said, to my children, my family, my friends, my coworkers, and all my colleagues here in the state legislature who have really supported me on this path. And just some things that I've learned about suicide beyond statistics, which we can talk about as well. But I do honestly believe that suicide is not a selfish act. It's a devastating outcome of someone who feels utterly hopeless, trapped in unbearable pain, and no longer afraid of dying. And I think when people are in this horrible space, they just don't see any alternative. They see nowhere out. And the reality is that if someone can get through that intense and short moment of an active suicidal crisis, the chances are they will not take their own life. And So we really want to push and promote the 988 lifeline, the suicide prevention lifeline that you can call or text to get help any time of day. And certainly there's been cuts to that lifeline, and that's been devastating. And California is working to backfill those. Um, but there's also what's become a symbol of this movement also is the semicolon, which is become more than punctuation. It's basically a sign that it's a symbol of a battle that you're fighting, and a pause that you took that was not an ending. So we really want to promote taking a stop, taking a breath, calling 988, texting 988, calling a friend, go out for a walk, do something other than act on that feeling of despair and hopelessness and unbearable pain.
I like what you said that it's not a selfish act because so often the victims that are left behind of suicide feel like that person somehow didn't care enough about them to stay. They take it personally or they get angry, that maybe that person wasn't thinking about the impact on the family. I don't know if they were thinking about anything but getting out of their pain, but talk about that a bit more because it seems like a really common reaction of the people left behind. Like, how could you do this to us?
Yeah, no, it is. And I felt that in the days after my husband died. I was angry. I was angry at him. I was angry at what he was putting our family through. And I took it upon myself to do some reading, to do some research, to talk to experts, and have really come around to understand that this is not a selfish act, that this really is a situation where people are in just, they believe their life is not worth living, and for whatever reasons. And the thing about suicide is it does not discriminate, so suicide impacts people of all ages, genders, race, ethnicity, incomes, sexual orientations. But certainly suicide numbers are higher for white males, for veterans, people who live in rural areas, our LGBTQ youth, transgender people. There's a high suicide rate among middle-aged adults, our first people, and it's one of the leading cause of deaths of kids, age, I think it's the second or third of kids age 10 to 24 or something like that. And it's just so devastating to me as a parent, and as the wife of a husband who took his own life, that what kind of world are we creating where people feel so desperate and so miserable and so lost and isolated that they feel like their only choice is to end their life.
It's
And
really hard to answer that question,
yeah,
isn't it? The why is so multifaceted, but you certainly can point to the heavy isolation of technology, especially during COVID, and that didn't really abate after COVID. At least the young people that I teach in their 18, 19 age group are still recovering from that experience,
oh
even though it
yeah,
was five
yeah.
years ago. But they still have some of the old habits of kind of isolating themselves and feeling very cut off from the world. And then, the world isn't going a very good way right now, at least in the United States. And so you can look at all these things and name any one of them. But
Oh
for
yeah.
someone who's feeling down anyway, add any one of these and they're just not resilient to handle the extra weight on their souls. And it seems
No, that's so well put. Yes, absolutely. And and the reality is that all of us have struggled. We felt hopeless. We've been depressed, and many of us suffer in silence. And but we are seeing now in our communities, on our streets, in our families, in our workplace, in our schools, in our religious institutions, people are scared. There's a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety, and whether it be, how am I going to put food on my table, to how do I, as a immigrant, how am I going to go and take my kids to the doctor if I'm afraid that I'm going to be deported, and then our young people, I think, feel the stress of climate change, and we're seeing all these, extreme weather events where we've got, a tornado in Scotts Valley, and our wharf falling into the ocean, and our coastline being eroded by these atmospheric rivers. And, I think, what kind of planet are these young people going to have in their future? And just the difficulty in finding a good paying job, and finding an affordable place to live. And, Santa Cruz and Santa Clara counties, the two counties I represent, are the most expensive places to live in the nation. And our homeless per capita is higher than most of the other nation as well. And, there's just a lot of pain and suffering here. And so, I really think that through all this pain and fear that we're seeing, really the greatest tragedy would be if we did nothing, because silence in the face of suffering is really its own form of violence. So we have to act. We have to address these issues, and we have to make life feel safe, and have paths of opportunity for people so they can live and their best life.
We certainly owe it to children, people who are going to be living through the future beyond us, to give them a sense of hope and that there's something really exciting ahead instead of what you just named, a very long list. What seems to tie a lot of those together is a lack of agency, where they're big, complex problems and they've gotten worse based on what our government is doing. And
No,
so
it's
maybe
really hard.
the antidote is finding a sense of meaning and agency on a local, specific level, even if it's just planting a tree somewhere in a park. So I'm curious, because you're in a state legislature, what kinds of remedies are you looking at, in addition to your very public role raising awareness, which is incredibly important, because some people don't even want to talk about it or wouldn't recognize the signs if they saw them. So there's
Yeah,
that.
yeah, and
There's
I'm happy to
also,
talk about some of the signs as well. But certainly in the legislature, we're trying to prioritize legislation to protect people, to protect our immigrant community, to continue healthcare access for people, to fight back against these huge, horrific cuts that we're seeing coming from the federal administration. And just looking at the 988 crisis line, they cut the lifeline that was a direct link for our LGBTQ community to be able to get specific help and care when they're having a crisis. So, we've been able to get some money to go toward that program to sustain that in California. But it's, I feel like it's a battle every single day. What we're seeing from this administration to really roll back the rights, our priorities, things we value here in California. And so it's just an ongoing day-to-day response that we're trying to do to protect people in the state of California.
I just want to honor you for getting up every day and doing that fight for your constituents, because we can't all be in Sacramento or Washington. And we sent you there knowing you are going to fight the good fight. So thank you for keeping your eye on this and fighting every day for what we need, which is humane policies that prioritize people instead of billionaires' wallets. And I know you keep that in mind every day. Let's talk about specifics, though. You mentioned a bill, and but you didn't talk about what it does. So tell me about, and I forget the number because you mentioned it rather
Oh,
quick.
sure, sure. So it's ACR 70, which stands for Assembly Concurrent Resolution. And it basically declares September as Suicide Prevention Awareness Month in the state of California. So it's a tool we have that will go to Congress as well, and to basically document what we're seeing, and what the statistics show as far as the rise in suicide rates, where there was an average of 134 suicides per day in the United States, which I think is like one for every 10 or 11 minutes. We've been probably talking for that amount of time, and just really take a pause and think about that, and just the amount of time we've been speaking someone has chosen to end their life. And we just got to do more. We have got to do more. And in the state of California, I think there's over 4,000 suicides. Maybe there was like 4,300 last year. And, and it really impacts not only, the individual, but the families, the coworkers, the friends. And then, of course, like I said, our LGBTQ plus youth were almost 5 times as likely to have attempted suicide compared to our heterosexual youth. And those numbers are just staggering to me, that there's just so much pain and suffering by people who don't feel like they are seen and accepted and loved for exactly who they are.
Yeah. Yeah. They feel like they have a target on their back, and they do. If you look at the reasons a lot of these policies are attacking people who don't have, the constituent power to fight back, or the money, and it
Yeah. Yeah.
creating even more pain and suffering than was already there in the first place. So you have an event coming up. Before we let you go, talk about this event that's happening on the 20th.
Yes.
Care Fair.
Yeah. I'm super excited. This has become my annual event that I do. It's in September for Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, and it's a care fair. And this year it will be in Santa Cruz in front of the County Government Center at 701 Ocean Street from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. And we're going to have different resource booths there for people to come and get information, also some fun activities as well, some meditation, some yoga. We're going to have a therapy dog. My favorite taco guy will be there with a taco truck, because we got to feed our bodies to be a healthy person. And just an opportunity to get outside, to enjoy this beautiful community we live in. And what we do is we honor mental health heroes from Assembly District 28. And these are people that are on the front lines doing this work every single day, and lifting them up and recognizing them for their work and how much they're doing to help us in our community. So we have a number of people who are going to be getting recognized in a resolution for being a mental health hero.
Will there be some sort of presentation and ceremony at the Care Fair?
Yes, yes. So there'll be a presentation at the Care Fair, and because my district's a bit large, where I have Santa Cruz and Santa Clara counties, so this is a rotating annual event. So last year we had it in Los Gatos in Santa Clara County. This year we're in Santa Cruz, and then next year we're going to plan on Morgan Hill. So we're trying to rotate it around the district, but certainly would love to have anybody come by, get some information. It's always a great time with kids and family members, and just honoring the people that are doing this incredible work, and getting some good information about how to take care of your own mental health care, because it's okay to ask your kids if they're thinking about suicide. That's not going to put an idea in their head, or your spouse. In fact, most would probably be relieved that somebody cares enough to ask, and maybe that opens the door for that really crucial conversation that needs to be had. And another thing I just want to mention too is that words do matter. And we're so used to saying that somebody committed suicide, and that dates back to the time where it was actually a crime. And suicide's not a crime; it's the results of an illness. So we don't say someone committed cancer. So words matter. So what we prefer to say is died by suicide or took their own life. But when talking about it, and it's okay to talk about stuff and make mistakes. I mean, I had a member on the floor right after I said that say committed suicide. I said it's okay. I do it too sometimes. It just slips out. But it's just, we're all learning. We need to give ourselves and people in our lives the space and grace to be on this journey, to understand the process. And the reality is that grief is an ongoing, it's not a journey to a destination. It's something that we'll carry with us every single day. And the path's not straight, it's not flat, it's not one direction. So really the work around suicide prevention awareness is also to remove that stigma. So
Just
I
naming
know,
it, just being able to talk about it like we
yeah,
are on the radio, and not put it under the rug or be embarrassed that it was in your family, because it's not a disease per se, it's a despair, and it can be prevented, as you say. So I'm glad you're able to have these conversations not only on the air, but in front of your colleagues in the assembly so they can be educated to talk about this very important issue. I hope your bill passes and that there's going to be a regular month where education can happen. But even if it doesn't, it can certainly happen anyway. And in our community, there's a lot of good conversations being had about mental health and how to bolster our infrastructure to help people professionally as well as personally. So thank you
yes,
for carrying the banner. I know it's both personal and political for you, and you've managed to knit those two things together in a very brave way, I think. Uh,
thank you.
yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. I talked to a colleague today that said that, a friend of his, someone had taken their own life, and didn't know what to say, didn't know what to say to reach out to the family. And that's okay. It's okay to just reach out and say, I don't know what to say. I
Hmm.
just want you to know I'm thinking of you. I love you. I'm here to help and support in any way. And keep checking back with them. Hey, do you want to go for a walk? Do you want to go get a cup of coffee? I mean, just and it's okay to say their name. I mean, I like to talk about Tom. I cannot He loved going to Home Depot and he loved lighting and light bulbs. And I cannot go to a Home Depot or hardware store and go through a light bulb aisle without thinking of him and getting a smile and just remembering how obsessed he was with all the different wattages.
That's
So
so sweet. He was a bright light in your life. And
yes, yeah,
it's funny because I wrote a song, and one of the lines is, remember the way I lived and not the way I died. And I think that's important for people who lose people that way, is you want to focus on who they were and not this last act that they did.
100%. Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Gail. And thanks for being our bright light in the assembly. Look forward to seeing you on the Care Fair. And that's September 20th at 11 a.m. at the county building.
Yes, County Government Center, 701 Ocean Street.
Great. Thank you so much for being with us on Talk of the Bay. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. You be well.
You too. Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye.